Welcome to How Brands Are Built, where branding professionals get into the details of what they do and how they do it. I'm your host, Rob Meyerson. Thanks for listening. Today's episode is brought to you by SquadHelp, the world's #1 naming platform. To use SquadHelp and launch a naming contest today, go to squadhelp.com and start receiving custom name ideas instantly. Today, I'm talking to Erminio Putignano, founding partner and managing director of Push, a brand consulting firm based in Melbourne, Australia, where he's also an adjunct professor at the School of Economics, Finance, and Marketing at RMIT University. When I met Erminio, we were both working for a firm called FutureBrand, where he was managing director of Australian operations, and I was strategy director for Southeast Asia. We met in Vietnam, where Erminio was giving a series of presentations to a client. I was immediately impressed by his ability to clearly and persuasively talk about brand strategy, what it is, how it works, and why it matters. I'm so excited to have him on the podcast today, and I hope you enjoy hearing his point of view. Oh, and as you'll soon hear, Erminio has an Italian accent. If it helps to read along, please visit howbrandsarebuilt.com for a full transcript of our conversation. Here it is. Erminio, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for inviting me, Rob.
I guess a good place to start, just to set the stage in terms of what we mean by brand strategy and brand positioning. If a client comes to you and says they need to create a positioning for their brand or reposition an existing brand, what are you thinking that you'll be delivering to them?
Well, first of all, probably I would try to go a step back in that conversation with the client, trying to understand better what is, if you want, the business problem that they are actually facing, that they believe positioning can help address. And that is the first point, really. From then on, we move into exploring the possibilities, and that is often an initial stage where consultations, workshops take place, market research is conducted before moving into the strategy per se. And the brand positioning, or whatever you want to call it, is the result of that brand strategy. And within that brand strategy, usually there is also a stronger component of validation, building concepts, prototyping, and progressively moving into a positioning platform that is sharper and sharper.
So when you're presenting those strategy ideas before one path has been selected, are you also presenting some initial thoughts about those implications to help the client visualize what this direction would look like?
Yeah, it's certainly very important. So already the positioning platform that we would work on would try to be very single-minded in terms of what is that core brand idea, but would also outline a series of proof points that touch on the many facets of the experience about that brand. But we also like to go a step further, yes, helping the client, as you just said, visualize, and in particular visualize what this brand could be, this so what, across what are the key expression of that brand. Again, could be the evolution of a visual and verbal identity, could be the brand environment, could be even implication on the culture of the organization. At that stage, you may not crack it completely. You are not offering the full solution, but you're helping the client imagine, see the possibilities of what that brand could be once it is fully implemented.
You mentioned the full solution, and you've used the phrase positioning platform, I think, a couple of times. Can you share a little bit about what's included in a brand positioning platform, if that's what you call it?
Yeah. Yes, it is a platform because it's made of different elements, but all those elements are then converging into a core single-minded ideas. We start with, first of all, importantly, a clear articulation of the business objectives or the business problems that the brand positioning can help address. Then we start moving into the who these brands is aiming for. And in this case, there are different ways to articulate the who, depending on whether what the brand strategy is for is more of a long-term, broad brand building exercise, rather than something that is more after more immediate short-term results. Because if it is more brand building, we tend to have more of a we look for a unifying insight, a conceptual target that can bring all these different audiences together. If it is more short-term, more immediate results, we go sharper on the segmentation and prioritizing some segments over others. Then from then on, we articulate the shift. All right? What is the shift for this brand? From to. What are potentially the barriers that these brands need to overcome and change to be able to become something stronger and better? And then we get to the core of the strategy, a brand essence, a brand promise that is really more a crystallization of the core idea of the brand, which often is defined in terms of a worldview, a set of beliefs, and the type of benefit that brands can provide for those that endorse it, engage with it. And from then on, we go more granular. The pillars, the proof points, and often the proof points are articulated around different factors from a product, from a pricing, distribution, internal culture, and are often structured over time. Those that we can activate right now, those that are in the pipeline that we need to prepare for, and very importantly also, what if? Blue sky ideas about proof points in the future. And then we often complete this with a point of view on the personality of the brand personality, and the cultural traits that these brands want to own.
Great. And how much do you distill that down? I know a lot of times we'll see an attempt at least to kind of do a brand on a page where you have all of this information, or at least a summarized version of this strategy on a single slide or a single page. Is that something that you do, or is it too long for that?
No, we do. Ultimately, everything is to come to life into a single page. That is really the platform in its more concise expression. However, behind that one page platform, there are lots of thoughts, lots of consideration.
You mentioned at the core of the brand, there's, you said essence and promise. And I just wanted to understand, were those different things or just different ways of saying the same thing?
Look, the essence, if you want, is the very sharp articulation of the brand. And usually that essence is centered around 2 or 3 words that really define the core idea at the heart of the brand. What I describe more as a statement, as a promise, instead is elaborating on that a little bit further.
Okay. And how is differentiation included in this process or in this model to ensure that the idea you're building the brand around is unique, if you think that's important?
It's absolutely important. Differentiation is a key. So another component of the brand strategy, whether we include it in the brand positioning per se platform or not, but certainly is a core component of it, is identifying what are the conventions of the category that we want to break. Very importantly, I would say that in any strategy, you need to have almost an enemy that you need to fight against. Whether that enemy is a specific number or type of competitors, whether the enemy, as I said, are more category conventions, habits, that is critical to define it. And that fundamentally gives you a big insight around which to build a differentiating type of brand platform.
Today's episode of How Brands Are Built is brought to you by SquadHelp, the world's #1 naming platform. Here's how SquadHelp works. You launch a naming contest to engage hundreds of naming experts. You're guided through an agency-level naming process that goes beyond traditional crowdsourcing. The platform uses AI and includes name validation features such as audience testing, trademark validation, linguistic analysis, and quality scoring. And SquadHelp doesn't just do naming. You can also use the platform for taglines, slogans, and logo design. To launch your naming contest today, go to squadhelp.com and start receiving custom name suggestions instantly. SquadHelp, company, brand, and business name ideas by experts. This episode is also brought to you by Rev.com, offering fast, affordable, accurate audio transcription and captions. I've used Rev for episodes of this podcast. I've also used it in my own work to transcribe conversations I've had with clients and in-depth interviews that I've conducted on their behalf. I've tried other services, and the reason I like Rev is that their transcriptions are accurate, their turnaround time is less than 24 hours, and the transcription cost is just $1 a minute. Right now, Rev is offering listeners of this show $10 off your first order. To get the $10 off coupon, visit rev.com/blog/HBAB for how brands are built. That's rev.com/blog/HBAB. Rev, transcriptions made simple. Now let's get back to the conversation with Erminio. You mentioned earlier that you typically have a brand essence that's just a couple of words to really succinctly define a brand, and then a longer statement. Since so much of what we deliver as strategists is written content, do you have any rules of thumb around how to write a good brand essence, for example? Is there any format that you believe in, or any kind of guiding principle that you give to your strategy team?
I would say that it comes down to being very single-minded. It comes down to be very sharp, very accurate in terms of conveying an idea. And this is all the more important because nowadays brands operate in a high degree of complexity. The system they operate in is very complex. And that's why I mentioned to you, Rob, before the need to articulate the proof points of different types. So now, to get practical, I usually I invite my people, my team to work with probably a couple of words, 3 words. Beyond that, potentially you're starting to diluting that single-mindedness. Sometimes those words can be quite abstract words. Mm-hmm. Sometimes those words can be more propositional because it could be read more as an invite to your audience to engage with that brand and what that brand stands for.
Do you have, I don't want to put you on the spot, and I know you probably can't share client, real client work, but do you have any examples of what you think are strong brand essences?
Oh, look, I can mention some of brand essences that we have recently developed. For instance, for a university that we worked on, and that is a Catholic university, they came to us because they wanted to broaden, if you wanted, the meaning and the appeal of the university beyond more of a Catholic type of space. So we worked with them, and ultimately we engaged them, workshops, market research, segmentation, and ultimately we landed on what I believe is a pretty strong brand essence, that is impact through empathy. So an essence like that, why in my mind is a strong essence, is an essence that is pretty clear, pretty sharp. We're talking about a university, a Catholic university that wants to have impact in the world. And the key to have that impact is to engage from an empathetic point of view. Empathetic from an emotional, from a cognitive, from an intellectual point of view. So why would I describe it as a powerful essence? Is because it's certainly single-minded. It certainly projects a fundamental core idea, an idea of empathy. The other thing that you see there is that while it is a single-minded, it's also an idea pretty powerful in terms of connotation, in terms of implication. And so almost you can interpret and look into that idea of empathy from so many different angles, all of them valid, but all of them are, if you want, the starting point for some major consequences in terms of storytelling. Not only that, you may describe it as a powerful idea because if you buy into a more empathetic engagement with the world, the implications are not just on communication, but you could start thinking about how the campus life may need to change, how the curricula could be structured in different way. So what you see in that case of a strong brand essence is the implication, the consequences of it. You can start imagining how powerful, how far-reaching they can be.
Do you have any sort of go-to prototypes or like a list of things that you might use as prototypes that you think really help your clients envision what a strategy could look like?
We don't have necessarily a particular methodology applied to that. We like to work with the concepts, brand concepts, to articulate. So think of them as mood boards, think of them as references to other brands, think of them also as starting fleshing out sometimes how the user experience for certain manifestation of the brands could look like. And in that case, often we partner with specialist agencies that may go deep on that end, but otherwise, more often than not, is articulating even with words what potentially a particular implication could actually be.
You've had a relatively long career in brand strategy. I'm wondering if you feel like there's anything significant changing in the way that it's done, or just the context within which you're doing brand strategy. Do you see big trends or changes on the horizon?
Certainly, there are a few trends. I can say probably some are more positive than others. Let me tell you some. Probably let's start on the negative side.
Great.
I see sometimes a larger number of brands operating without a clear brand positioning. And this also happens with large brands. So when there is certainly a lot at stake. And it's hard to even explain why that is happening. I think that it may be happening because there is more a belief that what constitutes a brand is ultimately experiences, more than having a predefined strategy driving all these. So in that case, there may be more of a shift of emphasis on experiences. And then, but what is the strategy? It feels like that the strategy is created organically from the bottom up. And by saying this, Rob, I'm not saying that experiences are not important. Absolutely they are. But I certainly continue to see experiences as a manifestation of an overarching idea. The other reason probably why a few brands don't have really a clear brand strategy behind could be because everything is all happening very fast. Nowadays, it's hard often to commit to a particular idea of the future, a particular idea of strategy. So there may be almost the temptation to go with the flow, right? And so let's see what happens, right? And let's try to constantly adapt to the context. So I'm seeing a little bit of that, which for me is a worrying trend. On the other hand, though, there are some very positive trends happening. And in particular, what I see more and more is that the very role of a brand strategy and the brand positioning being elevated further as the guiding principle of an organization. You may often not call it anymore brand positioning, but ultimately that is what it is, and becomes more guiding, not just sales, but the organization, the sense of identity, the place in the world that organization want to play, which ultimately means then more and more brand strategies is about giving an organization a cultural position, a worldview. You may call it a purpose, even though that is a bit of a controversial word that is sometimes abused, but certainly is signifying that we are elevating the role of brand strategy, which obviously at the end makes our job all the more interesting with all the responsibility that now goes with it, probably more than it was in the past.
Talk a little bit about how the word purpose is abused. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on it.
I think that, everybody's talking about purpose. And by the way, we've been talking about purpose for many years, but there is no doubt that has become especially topical over the last few years. From my point of view, at the heart of that debate, there is something fundamentally valid, as I just said. An organization needs a purpose, and that purpose needs to convey, a position in the world, a set of beliefs, a reason why an organization exists and can engage all sorts of audiences. But at the same time, often there is a bit of a big risk there. That is a bit of a bullshit risk at the end. The fact that often brand purpose is nothing more than an employee value proposition on steroid that may not really drive much business results, but is more about aimed at employees and feeling good about working an organization. The other big risk is that as much as organization and brands needs to play a bigger role in society, I certainly believe that, often brand purposes are pursued or articulated in a way that may sound a little bit delusional, as if a brand, an organization can solve all sorts of problems. The reality is that it's not true. That is not going to be the case. So they can end up being quite delusional and not last the distance.
Are there any brands out there that you think are doing a great job, that are doing almost everything right now?
Oh, there are certainly plenty of brands doing that. And I often find that the most interesting brands and the brand strategy behind comes not necessarily from the very big brands, household names around the world, are often the medium-sized companies, small enterprises that are doing the best job. And in fact, often the question then becomes whether they can scale up and staying fundamentally true while enriching what the original brand strategy is. But if your question is more about household names that we all know, look, I think that there are a few of them that I certainly admire. I mean, the brands Muji, IKEA, Patagonia, Nike, Airbnb. These are all brands that I think have been pretty good at defining a core idea, being very consistent in following a particular brand idea, but also being able to scale up and continue renewing themselves. I really admire those brands that have been able to follow a journey like that.
How about any that aren't household names that you want to introduce us to? Something maybe that's smaller or local to you?
Well, small, local to me, yes. If I look at Australia, look, all people living in Australia, like myself, they would say that they are proud of a brand called Aesop.
How's that spelled?
AESOP.
Okay, yes, I am familiar with
it's
that.
Like the Greek.
Right.
Probably by now would have been a household name also for many of your listeners. Essentially, it's a brand that was created here in Melbourne, perhaps around 20 years ago, beauty care, and is a brand that from the beginning has adopted a brand strategy, really more of a culture about perfectionism, almost an obsessive attention to detail. And they've conveyed it without really aiming at the usual advertising, marketing approach that is common in the beauty care system, but almost adopting a more almost pharmaceutical approach to what a brand could be about. Is really the ingredients, is really the craftsmanship that goes with it. And then they've started expanding, and their expansion has been driven by a strong degree of localization. The most important expression of the brand is the product range per se, is the packaging that is very iconic. It is in particular the points of sale. All of them different, and all of them to a larger or lesser extent capturing the particular culture of the place where those shops are situated. And is a beautiful brand that so far has been able to expand from Australia around the world, retaining a high degree of integrity.
Great. Well, I know you have junior team members at Push. I know you've been somewhat of a mentor to junior employees throughout or at least recently in your career. I'm curious if you have any advice that you feel like you give consistently to younger people that are interested in becoming successful brand consultants.
Rob, I think that here I may need to echo some of the other people that you have interviewed on your podcast, and it's a lot about inviting them to go out there, to experiment, to try new things. And for me, when I say try new things, to learn a lot, is in particular trying to have a particular attention to mix highbrow and lowbrow things, experiences, and not that probably that difference makes any sense nowadays, but it's very important, right, to mix experience, readings, but at the same time, my recommendation is also this, is that if you as a young practitioner have the chance to identify an agency, an environment, a workplace that can be a good school for you, where you can receive good mentorship, be guided, especially in your early years of your career, stick to it, go there, and try to learn as much as you can as a sponge. This is very important. I'm saying this because one of the other trends that I've seen over the last years is that young people, and fair enough, they are right, they want soon to go out and set up their own agency, their own practice, and conquering the world. And all this entrepreneurial spirit is absolutely very valuable and to appreciate. What happens is that I find people that have enormous potential, that have almost gone solo a little bit too early. And after a few years, they've realized almost that probably they've not really defined a particular approach, a particular methodology. Almost they don't have a particular point of view that has been nurtured and tested to give them confidence to go to the next level. So my recommendation is this: yes, try new things, set up your company, do all this different stuff, but also be able to acknowledge the importance of almost joining an environment and a team of people that can be a little bit as a school in your early stages of your career.
Great. Well, I know I've learned a lot from you, and I'm sure your employees now are doing the same. So thank you for that, and thank you for joining me today on the podcast.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to How Brands Are Built. If you like what you heard, please subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or the podcasting service of your choice, and leave a rating and a review. I'd love to hear what you think. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram, or visit us online at howbrandsarebuilt.com, where you can check out show notes, articles, blog posts, sign up for the newsletter, or contact me with any questions or suggestions. To learn more about Erminio and his brand consulting firm, visit pushcollective.com. There's also a great video of one of Erminio's presentations titled Managing Brands in the Trump Era, Not for the Faint-Hearted. It's almost 2 years old now, but still relevant given we're still in the Trump era. The video is on How Brands Are Built, and I'll repost it so that you'll see it on the homepage and in the post related to this episode. How Brands Are Built is a production of Heirloom Agency, LLC. Our theme music is by Isha Erskine Project. I'm Rob Meyerson, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks again.